He was born into the fight, cursed by poverty, carved by the streets, half Apache, half black, full of fists and fury. He drank too much, trusted the wrong people, but for a minute, just a minute, he was king. Don Jordan wasn't bred for the spotlight. Born June 22, 1934 in the heart of Los Angeles, he was the 14th of 19 children. His mother was Apache, his father African American. Home was cramped, loud and lean. The Jordans didn't grow up, they got by. Jordan's first language was survival. He spoke Spanish fluently, handled English with an accent, and quit school for good at 15. "I wasn't a tough kid," he once said. "I was real quiet. I just had one big fault. I like to fight." That fault became his identity. As a teenager in the Russian Flats district of Boyle Heights, Jordan ran with a gang 50 deep. He wasn't just part of the crew, he led it. "Nobody gave us anything," he said. "All we ever had was what we took." Fists were the family trade. His father Harold, a produce worker by day, dabbled in amateur boxing by night. Two older brothers tried to make something of it. They didn't. But Don was different. He had a gift, a sense for rhythm, a taste for violence, and a reason to leave the streets behind. Boxing was the ticket, and he punched it hard. 4 years of reform school faded in the rear view. He got married, slipped out of the gang life, and started training full-time. On his right forearm, in faded blue ink, were 2 words stacked like commandments: Flats and Geronimo. Jordan's first major win came at an amateur tournament in the Wilmington Bowl, where he bullied his way to the top and never looked back. The street kid from East L.A. was now a rising prospect. He turned pro in April of 1953 under the management of Felix Villarreal, launching his career out of Hollywood's Legion Stadium, a smoky little fight barn where prospects were built or broken on weeknights. He rattled off 8 straight wins, all fire and flash, and the press gave him a moniker of Dynamo Don. But the proving ground came in January of 1954 against unbeaten Andy Escobar. Jordan wasn't favored to win, but fought like someone who was tired of being the underdog. In front of 4,800 fans on their feet, Jordan edged Escobar with a late charge that turned the arena into a madhouse. Fans hurled $65 worth of coins and bills into the ring like an offering to LA's new boxing king. 2 months later, Escobar got his revenge, outpointing Jordan and handing him his first pro loss. The lesson? Boxing gives and takes away with equal fury. By August of that year, the business of boxing came calling. Villarreal released him from his contract, but not without throwing a punch of his own. He claimed another manager, Harry Kabakov, lured Jordan away with big promises and big talk. Kabakov was always telling him to get rid of me, Villarreal said. Kabakov, a fast-talking hustler with a nose for headlines, wanted to repackage Jordan. He insisted Don go by Geronimo, a nod to his Apache roots, and pitched him as a tribal warrior with fists that swung like tomahawks. "He may draw some people off the reservations," Kabakov said. "I would like to stress that he is a genuine Apache." Kabakov knew something about reinvention. Born Melville Himmelfarb, he swapped out his birth name for one he claimed honored a fighting uncle from St. Louis. Others say it was just a good way to leave a shady paper trail. Name games aside, Jordan stayed in the trenches. He wasn't flashy outside the ropes, just a married man with 3 daughters and a dogged belief that boxing could still take him somewhere better. He won a pair of decisions over former champ Laurel Salas and twice tangled with the cagey Art Aragon. In their first bout, Jordan floored Aragon early but faded late, losing on points. The rematch was worse. Jordan hit the canvas in round 1 and never caught up, dropping a lopsided decision. In 1956, Jordan started with a win that felt more like a courtroom drama than a boxing match. He squared off against former lightweight champion Paddy DeMarco in a slow-burning contest that limped through the early rounds. For 4 frames, DeMarco's rough-and-tumble style kept him ahead. Then in the 5th, Jordan detonated a right hand that put DeMarco on the canvas. The ex-champ popped up quick, but his jaw wasn't so lucky. It was cracked. Jordan, sensing blood, did what all great finishers do. He pounced. A flurry of punches forced DeMarco to retreat into a neutral corner. DeMarco tried signaling to the referee, "Jaw broken, fight over." Jordan didn't wait for the ref's cue. He followed DeMarco into the corner and landed another shot square in the face. DeMarco hit the mat again and beat the count, trying to explain himself through the pain. The fight was waved off. On his way back to the locker room, Jordan had to fight one more round, this one against an enraged fan who lunged at him in the hallway. The rest of the year didn't go much smoother. Jordan lost a razor-thin decision to former world champ Jimmy Carter, and the grumbling started. Some fans thought the verdict was suspect. The night was chaotic even by L.A. fight standards. Someone phoned in a bomb threat to the Olympic Auditorium, prompting a full sweep of the venue by police. The device turned out to be a hoax, but the paranoia was real and the tension wasn't going anywhere. That tension finally burst when the whispers turned into headlines. Allegations surfaced that Jordan's career had been manipulated from the shadows. An investigation revealed that both he and manager Harry Kabakov were allegedly under the thumb of notorious Los Angeles matchmaker Babe McCoy, a man with a long history of shady dealings in West Coast boxing. Suddenly, the conversation shifted from scorecards to score settling. Promoter Cal Eaton was dragged into the fray, accused of shortchanging Jordan for his win over DeMarco. According to contracts on file, Jordan was entitled to 27.5% of the gate, roughly $4,000. Instead, he pocketed a measly $1,000. Kabakov brushed off the discrepancy, saying the percentage was written, quote, for publicity purposes. No one bought it. Jordan, for his part, played the loyal soldier. He told investigators he was perfectly happy with his purses from both the DeMarco and Joe Michelli fights. He even defended Kabakov, claiming the manager hadn't taken a cut from his last 10 fights. But the numbers told a different story. Despite earning over $20,000 in the ring, Jordan was still deep in debt to Kabakov, to McCoy, and to a system that seemed to chew up fighters with alarming efficiency. When the dust settled, McCoy's license was yanked. Kabakov slithered out of most of the heat. The wheels started coming off not long after Jordan's stock had finally begun to rise. First, he was stripped of the California lightweight title for failure to defend. Then came the losses. He fought Joey Lopes in what was supposed to be a title eliminator for the state belt. The bout marked California's first experiment with the 10-point must-scoring system, and Jordan wound up at the wrong end of a split decision. A rematch was offered, but it never happened. Jordan couldn't make the lightweight limit anymore. He moved up in weight, but the setbacks followed. A points loss to Orlando Zulueta had the crowd in an uproar. Another close fight, another bitter decision that didn't go Jordan's way. The momentum he once had after defeating Andy Escobar had all but evaporated. A decision loss to Charlie Tombstone Smith for the California Welterweight title didn't help, and neither did a flat performance against L.C. Morgan. He took some bouts in Mexico, hoping to rebuild. Instead, it ended in an argument with manager Kabakov, which left him stranded in Mexico City. But Jordan's luck changed in the form of a former used car salesman. Don Nesseth flew south and brought Jordan home, and just like that, became his new manager. With Nesseth handling the business, training duties fell to two of the best in the game, Eddie Futch and Jackie McCoy. They had their work cut out for them. McCoy was appalled by what he saw. Jordan, now entering his physical prime, trained hard when he wanted to, but drank harder. He drank like a fish, McCoy said. I'd never seen anything like it. Still, the wins returned, even if they didn't impress. He edged Isaac Logard in a disputed decision, then turned in two close victories over rugged contender Gaspar Ortega. The second win set the stage for a world title shot against Virgil Akins. Finally, Jordan had clawed his way back to the spotlight. But true to form, he nearly sabotaged himself again. Just before the biggest fight of his life, Jordan was arrested for taking out a 60-inch bow and firing arrows at two young women sitting in a parked car. There were no injuries, but enough trouble to grab headlines and police attention. It was just harmless fun, Jordan said later, but I should have known better. When fight night arrived, Jordan walked into the ring a 3-1 underdog. Most figured Akins, the champion, would leave him bleeding and broken. They didn't realize that Jordan, for all his flaws, wanted to show off his talent when the lights were brightest.
Jordan making a punching bag out of the champion. Was hit low. Referee again warning him. He's been talking to him ever since the fight started. Those left hooks have cut that eye. We're going into the left corner and take a look at the champ. At the end of the fight, at the end of the round, rather. At the end of round 12. That's the champion, who's been an open target here for the fast-punching challenger, Don Jordan, who is from Los Angeles, of course. That's why the crowd has been rooting for him steadily. He's been outboxing the champ, Virgil Akins from St. Louis. He's taller, inch and a half taller, and 7 years younger. When the light shines, you can catch that tremendous bulge, as big as a half of an Alberta peach. All puffed up. The champion in white, the challenger in black. Your Gillette Cavalcade of Sports coming your way from Los Angeles. Next Friday, the World's Match Game Bowling Championships coming from Chicago. That's the welterweight champion of the world in white, and he's a sorry sight with his eye all bulged up. He isn't as sharp or as composed as he normally is. Flailing away wildly, ramming his man. The challenger got a little annoyed at that. He's had that head jammed up against his throat all night. Of course, if that makes it one punch, then to flatten him. 10 seconds. It cannot end in a knockout unless it's a TKO. 5 seconds.
To 136, the winner, and a fighting new world heavyweight champion, Don Jordan.
And now into the ring, and Don Dumpy.
And now this is Don Dunphy up in the ring with the new welterweight champion, Don Jordan, who has had a crowd planted on his head. I'm going to ask Don to come over here and face our NBC cameras and NBC radio. Don, you're very tired, I know, but congratulations.
First thing I'd like to say hello to my mom, who's very ill. And I know she's pulling for me all the way, and I hope she gets up and walks soon.
Tell me, did Virgil hurt you at any time during the fight?
Yes, he shook me several times, but I was determined. I had my determination to go in and fight.
Well, what did you look for? To keep away from his right hand?
No, I look for his weakness, force the fighting. He doesn't like to be forced.
How about that roughhousing at the end? Did it upset you?
In some way it did, some ways it didn't. I was told to keep my head and think at all times, not to get hit.
Don, I know you're tired, and we're very happy to have you on our NBC setup. And thank you very much. Good luck to you. And how about a return bout with Aiken?
I'll be glad to have it.
This is Don Ness, his manager. Don, do you have any plans now that you've won the crown?
Well, it's something I've always wanted for Don was a championship, and we have a return match, and there's a couple of good fights out here we're looking for.
Thank you
He's
very
a fighting champ.
I know he is. Thank you very much, Don Jordan, the new welterweight champion. This is Don Country returning you to ringside.
After all the false starts, bad breaks, and blown decisions, Jordan finally had his night. He shocked Aikens and claimed the welterweight crown, and afterward he barely looked like a man who'd been through 15 rounds of battle. The fight was easier than I expected, Jordan said. The secret? Trainer Eddie Futch. I did just what he told me to do. He planned all the strategy, and he had it down right. Any credit for my success tonight goes to Eddie. Jordan was one of the toughest guys I ever saw, Futch said later. A quiet kind of tough, but nobody could really control him. Flush with victory, Jordan already had bigger dreams. He wanted a crack at Joe Brown's lightweight title, planned after a rematch with Aikens. It's a great feeling to be champion, he said. For once, things seemed to be going his way. But winning the belts only magnified his bad habits. Weeks after becoming champion, Jordan was arrested for marijuana possession, caught as a passenger in a car pulled over for erratic driving. An officer spotted a lit joint smoldering on the floor of the back seat. Jordan denied any knowledge of it, and the charges were eventually dropped. But the headlines stuck. Then came the real trouble. Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo, the underworld's long claws in boxing, came calling. Carbo, who had financial interests in Virgil Aikens, claimed he was entitled to the same 15% from Jordan now that the belt had changed hands. When Don Nesseth, Jordan's manager, refused, things got ugly. Threats turned into beatings. Jackie Leonard, mistakenly thought by Carbo to be a willing middleman, was attacked and hospitalized after going to the authorities. The assault drew scrutiny, and the dominoes started falling. Carbo and Palermo were eventually indicted and convicted on charges of conspiracy and extortion tied directly to their pursuit of Jordan's earnings. The sentences were long, the fallout historic. For the first time in decades, the mob's grip on the sport began to loosen. But Jordan wasn't exactly outraged by the mob's attention. If anything, he seemed flattered and began talking to Los Angeles mobster Mickey Cohen. By 1958, Jordan's stock had never been higher. He was crowned Fighter of the Year by the Southern California Boxing Writers Association. By that year, Jordan had made it undeniable. He was a champion, and he had earned it. The following April, he defended his welterweight title in a rematch against Aikens. This time, Aikens came armed with a psychological play, Harry Kapikoff. Jordan's former manager and longtime agitator suddenly turned up in Aikens' corner, barking support for the St. Louis slugger. It backfired. Even with a bruised right hand suffered early in the bout, Jordan dictated the pace with his jab. Aikens wilted in the final rounds, and Jordan cruised to a clear decision. Afterwards, Aikens' corner claimed foul play, alleging that Jordan's gloves had been rubbed with some kind of hot capsule that left a burning sensation on Aikens' skin. The accusation didn't stick. Jordan had bigger things on his mind, like chasing down a major payday. He set his sights on Carmen Basilio or Sugar Ray Robinson. In the meantime, he defended his title against Portland teenage phenom Denny Moyer and pocketed the biggest purse of his career, $70,000. But just as the spotlight seemed brightest, the shadows began to return. By November of 1959, Jordan's relationship with Nesseth soured. Jackie McCoy, who already owned half of Jordan's contract, watched from the sidelines as Nesseth looked to sell his share for $125,000. Then came a trip through South America. First, Jordan outpointed the undefeated Fernando Barreto over 10 rounds. A week later, he faced little-known Luis Federico Thompson in Buenos Aires. The result was a disaster. Thompson, a 32-year-old Panamanian who had recently adopted Argentine citizenship, knocked Jordan out in the 4th round. It was Jordan's first knockout loss, and it made international headlines. Jordan chalked up the defeat to a lingering virus that had dogged him for 4 months. McCoy pointed the finger at bad intel. We were told Thompson couldn't break an egg, McCoy said. The belt was still Jordan's, but the armor was cracking. By February of 1960, Jordan's fall from grace had begun to gain traction. Arrested for drunk driving, he stood before a judge who didn't mince words. "You're on a one-way ticket to Skid Row," the judge said. The unraveling accelerated in May. On the 16th, Jordan lost a non-title bout to Candy McFarland, a blown-up lightweight out of Philadelphia. McFarland was hardly elite, but he staggered a sluggish and rusty Jordan in the 9th round, proof that something was off. Not only did Jordan drink, said Jackie McCoy, he was a chain cigarette smoker. Not many fighters do that, but somehow he won the welterweight title. Just 11 days later, Jordan stepped into the ring to defend his crown against Benny Kid Paret. It didn't go well. Jordan, pale and visibly listless, wilted under Paret's punishing body attack. Jordan's punch volume was so pathetic that the crowd applauded him sarcastically in the 13th round when he finally threw a punch. He lost his title by unanimous decision. Afterward, Jordan pointed to an undisclosed rib injury suffered during the McFarland fight. He said the injury had gone unnoticed during his pre-fight medical. I knew I wasn't myself against Paret, Jordan said. I know I can beat him. If I didn't think I could lick the guy, I wouldn't be insisting on a rematch. But excuses couldn't mask the nosedive. He returned to Los Angeles for the holidays, battered and humiliated. Whatever he hoped to find back home, peace, recovery, redemption, was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Jordan's name kept popping up in police blotters and commission reports. He refused to appear for a mandatory physical, earning him a suspension from the California State Athletic Commission. Then came another DWI arrest after plowing his car into 2 parked vehicles. In a move that would define the next chapter of his unraveling career, Jordan bought out the remainder of his contract from manager Jackie McCoy for $80,000, the exact amount he'd earned in his title loss to Benny Paret. It was a terrible business decision, but by then, Jordan was racking those up as frequently as losses in the ring. McCoy, for his part, was done with Jordan. He had great natural ability, McCoy said, but he abused it. Right after winning the title, he got popped for drunk driving. Then it was marijuana, and he wouldn't train. At a certain point, you've seen the ending before it happens. Jordan landed a new backer, Kirk Kerkorian, the head of MGM Studios. With Hollywood Flash behind him, Jordan enjoyed the perks, chartered flights, first-class hotels, the air of importance. But the results in the ring told a darker story. His career turned into a slow-motion train wreck, a cascade of losses, each more lopsided than the last. Still, he insisted there was a plan. He told reporters he'd give boxing another year or two before transitioning into the bail bonds business, following in the footsteps of fellow L.A. fighter Art Aragon. But the ring doesn't wait for good intentions. He was knocked out for the second time in his career by Tony DeMarco, a punch Jordan insisted was low. DeMarco shrugged it off. It was right to the pit of the stomach, DeMarco said. Clean as they come. The defeats piled up. Jordan's name lost its shine. Worse, his efforts no longer passed the eye test. Fans and officials began to question whether he was even trying. That all came to a head in a bout against Battling Torres. Jordan went down in the opening round, seemingly from a grazing shot. The crowd of 4,000 exploded in boos as he stayed on the canvas. The referee, incensed, shouted at him, "You had better fight." Jordan didn't get up. The California State Athletic Commission withheld his $2,000 purse and revoked his boxing license for good. For 8 years, Jordan stayed silent. No interviews, no headlines, just a former champion disappearing into the haze of memory. When he finally resurfaced, he denied any type of a fix in that final fight, the one that got his license pulled and his reputation dragged through the mud. He'd simply been caught unprepared. Personal problems, he insisted. What followed was a rough descent into civilian life. The former welterweight champion of the world discovered that championship belts don't buy second chances. I went from job to job, Jordan said. I was a swamper in a produce market, a machinist in the shipyards, and a carpet layer. I found there were more people in public against me than there were when I was fighting. He eventually found some footing in Compton, California, settling down with his second wife Guadalupe and their 3 children. For a while, he held steady work in the tool repair division of Douglas Aircraft in Santa Monica. There were flashes of contentment. It was quite a life, Jordan said. Boxing was good to me. I just didn't take advantage of the opportunity. But the calm didn't hold. By 1970, his second marriage was over. The booze, always lingering in the background, started taking the foreground again. Then came the change. 3 years later, Jordan put down the bottle for good. I decided I was throwing my life away and there must be a way to quit drinking, Jordan said. I went to a doctor and he told me I was an alcoholic and told me what that meant. I found out that it meant I couldn't have a drink at all. He took work as a longshoreman, loading cargo on the Wilmington-San Pedro waterfront, far removed from title fights and press conferences. In 1977, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. The doctors initially said it was terminal, but Jordan, as always, kept getting back up. He didn't drive to work. He walked every day across the same bridge, with his lunch in one hand and his past in the other. The old welterweight champ had carved out a quiet rhythm in his later years, far from the roar of the crowds and flashing bulbs. Retirement was around the corner. "I got one more round left," he'd tell friends with a crooked grin. But that final round came not in a ring, but in a parking lot. On the afternoon of September 30th, 1996, Jordan suffered one last brutal indignity, a savage beating in broad daylight that left a 62-year-old in a coma. He was found sprawled and bloodied near the Longshoremen's Hall. Authorities determined he had been bludgeoned with a 2x4. He clung to life in the ICU for weeks before being transferred to a long-term care facility where he spent his final months. On February 13th, 1997, Jordan died from his injuries. After a 6-month investigation, police arrested George Hernandez and Gilbert Fonts, two out-of-work longshoremen who knew Jordan personally. The motive, investigators believed, was robbery. Jordan, a creature of habit, was known to carry large amounts of cash. The charges didn't stick. Insufficient evidence, the authorities said. The suspects walked. Jordan didn't get a hero's end. He got a parking lot and a 2x4. Just silence. The exit made for fighters who took every punch life had to offer and stood longer than anyone thought he could.